not on the flood sales tax committee, Ken.
Well, that explains a lot of, okay.
Actually, I think you're vice chair, Ken. I think as of 12/2, we assigned him vice chair. I just looked it up.
Okay. Well, I'm here anyway.
He's not on my roll call, so is he supposed to be here in lieu of someone else? Because I just have is it now a 7-member committee?
No, I think there's just 2 county commissioners on this.
So I'm not on it.
Oh, you're not on it?
I'm not on it.
Okay.
I looked back at the 12/2. I was wondering about that when I was sitting here in the office. I looked back on the 12/2 minutes when we approved all the assignments, and you're chair, Mary, and Ken, you're vice chair.
Ah.
Thanks for the update.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
and I just updated the roll call, so.
All right.
Okay.
Good thing you're here, Ken.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Rick.
I'll be a silent.
Okay, great. Well, we've got quite a number of things to go through, so if I could get a motion to approve the previous minutes, or if there are any corrections or changes, I'd take that too.
Roger motion.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a second?
Second, by Ken.
Thank you, Ken. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 And we will move on then to the flood sales tax fund update. Mr. Montplaisir.
Okay, I'll refer you to the letter that I sent you. We currently have $7.6 million on hand. We've got encumbrances of about $950,000, and those are for projects that have been approved but haven't requested all of their funds yet because the projects aren't done. One of the things I wanted to point out is not on the encumbrance list is the local project share for the city of Davenport Ring Dike, which I believe is still being considered by the State Water Commission. So that's $1.4 million. So when you look at the 950,000, you might want to add 1.4 if you're still considering funding that program, which I assume you are. The available unencumbered balance is $6.6 million. And if you take into account the Davenport project, it's $5.2 million. Just wanted to point out that through May, our sales tax revenue has still been very strong. We're about 5.5% above the previous year, so that's good. I expect it to start dropping now because of the COVID expenses, or lack of people buying anything because of the COVID.
So are you getting any sense about that at all, Mike? I mean, because certainly a lot of people must be buying stuff online.
They must be, and I think that's why we've held up as good as we have. But, you know, the May stuff, our sales tax run about 2 months behind from the day that it's actually purchased in a store or something, and it's reported to the state and paid to the state and then paid to us. It's about a 2-month lag. So we really haven't seen, I don't think, a lot of the COVID type reductions, but I'm sure we will some, you know, in June and July.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Sterling.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Jason. Just wanted to give an update on that Davenport project. About a month ago or so, the State Water Commission did approve that project. I know it's going through the process. I'm not 100% sure of when all that cost share will be finalized, and that the city would be back in their final request. But I'm sure that that'll be happening fairly soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this so far? On any of the finances, the funds? Anything else, Mike?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to item number 4, the status of the previously approved projects. Has anybody got that?
There is a report in your packet, just kind of detailing out what's been approved, what's been paid, and then the amount left to be paid, and that's where the 950,000 comes from.
Okay. And does anyone have any questions about that list? Comments? Anything you want to add, Jason?
Are you taking any questions from the gallery?
Certainly.
Oh, just a quick question. I think we talked about this last time, that there are some really old unexpended funds, Mike, and I thought that they were going to look into this to see if we should just, what the status was. And I know there's still some on 13, and then we still have some on 15. But I'm not sure what, we've made changes to that or not. I didn't compare the lists.
Yeah, I haven't had time to look at that. I see one of them is the city of Castleton, and then the other one is the Maple Steel Dam project. We can follow up. Sheila is on the phone, and she may have some insight in the Castleton one.
So Sheila, there's about $4,000 left on that levee repair in 2013.
I can maybe talk to that a little bit too. It's Brandon Noy with More Engineering, and Sheila is also on the line. Those two outstanding balances from the 2013 and then the 2015 Castleton Industrial Park, those were two that we're asking to be put into this updated request. So kind of clearing them out at that point. So I'd clean that up and move it into this new request.
Okay, great. Those are the oldest. And then there's, that Upper Maple River Detention Study Phase 2. Do you know any, Roger or Jason? There's also the Rush River Detention Study Phase 2. I don't know if Carol's on. Anybody want to talk about those?
This is Jason. I believe the Rush River project, along with the city of Amenia, that's continuing to move forward. However, that upper Maple River study, I believe that's really ended. We haven't had any meetings on that in, I think, about a year and a half. So I don't think that would be moving forward anymore.
Okay. Maybe we can just go through these and clean them up. If you want to take a look at all of this before the next meeting, Jason, and get it cleaned up, because there's a few more, and I know we're going to be talking about Harwood today, but there's over $100,000 sitting there.
And I'd like to suggest that if the project is completed and the funds aren't going to be used, that we turn them back. Not that we rededicate them to another project, but I think the right way to do it would be to close out the project and return it to the fund, and then any new consideration is a new consideration. Otherwise we kind of lose track of it, I think.
Yeah, from the accounting standpoint, that's what we prefer to do.
Well, we can certainly make that a motion, Ken, just so it's clear.
Okay. I move that unexpended funds on completed projects be returned to the main fund.
And then there's a second.
Mike, I'd second it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pollock,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Benson.
Yes.
And thank you.
The motion carries. So as I mentioned, there's a number of these, and Jason, maybe you can just go through them, but one really pops out is that Sheldon Addition Ring Levee project. What's going on there?
I think
This is, go ahead.
$500,000.
yeah, that's a project that they're planning to do in conjunction with the completion of the FM diversion when it goes through right next to there. This is an area that will be vulnerable with the construction of the diversion. And so that's why that's in here, but it's approved, but they haven't got that far yet.
Okay. All right, great. Any other questions on any of these unfinished projects? Okay, then we'll move on to,
Mary,
yes?
if we could get a letter from the Water Resource District just updating, you know, which of these studies and everything are still ongoing and which projects are still ongoing or which ones are going by the wayside, you know, that would be good. Same with Castleton on their projects that have leftover funds, so that we have some documentation on what's happening.
I believe I had already sent in requests for them to be canceled.
Okay, I've seen that, so.
And this is Roger. Mike, I'll make sure that comes from the water district.
Thank you.
Okay, great. On to item 5, new projects. And I do not have a list of the new projects other than in the package. Who wants to start this off? Jason, do you want to start it off? I know we've got somebody from City Castleton there, and then we've got quite a number from Harwood.
All right, yes, Commissioner. So I'll start off with the two projects that I had submitted on the Hofer. And I don't know if everybody has the updated slides, but those were sent out earlier this morning to get added to the packet. Does everybody have those?
I do.
Okay.
What was delivered with the packet?
Okay. I can quick forward those from Heather.
Let me ask a question as you get ready to go here, and that is this property that's protected once the epic diversion is complete?
Commissioner, for both of these properties, they fall within the protected area, but because of their elevations, they won't be protected.
So when you're running 37 feet through town, these are the low areas.
Right, and we don't have many of these properties left. So starting with the Hofer property, the first slide I show on the left is the 100-year floodplain. So you can see the majority of the homes that are in that area are all out of the 100-year floodplain, but that the Hofer home itself, it floods at about 36 feet. And then on the right is the FEMA floodway. And this was updated after the change in the FEMA floodplain back in that 2011 to 2013 timeframe when the floodplain was updated. So you can see that whole parcel is completely within the floodway, and which means you really can't build there and can't add fill into the area. The next slide shows in the blue is the 350 minimal disturbance zone, and the yellow is the additional 100-foot limited disturbance zone, which goes out to 450 feet. That makes it where any new construction can't happen within those areas outside of roads and a small 8x10 shed. So again, this whole parcel is very limited. And then on the right-hand side is at 36 feet or 37 feet with the diversion. The blue is the areas that'll still have flood issues with the diversion operating. So the house, part of the house are out of that, but the main picture of the 2011 flood, and you can see the house is completely surrounded, and they have had damage where they've had to file claims through FEMA on 2009 and 2011. And that's just and then page 5 is a closer in image. Along with this is starting on page 6, we've got some discussion on the bridge itself that accesses. So historically, at one point, there was 2 bridges going west of University Drive or County Road 81 that crossed the Red River or the Wild West River. The west bridge was eliminated about 40 to 50 years ago, and then this bridge was built in the early 60s, and it's a wood structure and has sustained significant flood damage over the years, and it has significant structural problems. This is a picture of this spring. All the approach roadways being completely washed away, and a large number of trees up on the bridge. Moving to page 7, some of the components of the bridge inspection. The critical one is the cone steel on the bottom where it says both the abutment caps have rotated and 50% off the piling, and that abutment 4 is leaning. Those are critical issues that would have to be resolved prior to opening this bridge back up. And I know the Hopers had brought up the concern of fire and EMS, and even if we were to get the approach roadways shaped back up, this bridge would not be load rated heavy enough to allow any kind of large emergency vehicle outside of a pickup over top of it. And then the last slide 8 shows the leaning abutments and how those the wood piling, the top round part of the wood piling, you can see the beams, the square beams are sliding off of those, and as those piling rotate, which is the critical safety issue. And then page 9, it's been a significant yearly event to go out and clean up all of the various trees and debris that gets hung up on this bridge, especially on major flood years, but even on lesser flood years, it's been a significant cost. And to replace this bridge would be somewhere in that $1 to $1.5 million. And right now, the only property that this bridge serves is the Hoper property. So, to kind of wrap this up, we've got multiple issues with the property itself. We had submitted it for a FEMA acquisition for a pre-disaster mitigation funding, and it was not approved. Unfortunately, with pre-disaster mitigation, it's a nationwide program with a limited amount of funding. And then we were hoping that maybe it would be able to go into the hazard mitigation program last year following the flood declaration, but unfortunately there wasn't enough money available for that either. So right now, this is the only option. I did look into see if this was something that would be viable through the FM diversion funding, and really it's the same sales tax money, whether it comes from the diversion authority or from this committee. And in talking with Joel Paulson and Eric Dodds, it really seemed that this was the best place for this project to come through versus through the diversion project, as they would have to be following the full federal acquisition process with all of the relocation and getting the appraisals. So with that, requesting, and then on page 10 is the cost estimate, requesting that we use what the city has done in the past for their flood acquisitions that are non-federal flood acquisitions, which is 110% of the assessed value. I think one of the challenges too in discussing this with Eric Dodds is, what if you went out and got appraisals, there could be quite a wide range when it comes to appraisals based on the challenges of the area of how one appraiser may view the access issue versus the floodway issue versus the limited and minimal disturbance zone issue. So a lot of different things that could go into it versus using what the city of Fargo has done with that 110%. So with that, maybe it's easier to take this item before I move to the next one.
So I have a question. This is Ken. Is the opportunity for FEMA buyout, there's really no program out there right now?
Commissioner, the only program that's still available is the pre-disaster mitigation. And again, we had already submitted it and it had been declined through that. There is the potential that because of this year's presidential or the governor's request to the president for a presidential declaration, if that happened, that we could get some hazard mitigation funding. But I'm not hopeful of that because of the fact that this year's flood was similar to last year's in that there was not significant statewide. While it was, big enough to warrant a request for presidential disaster, it's really not big enough money-wise to bring back a large amount of the hazard mitigation funding. And the state already has a laundry list of projects that they've prioritized for hazard mitigation money, which is why we weren't able to apply for hazard mitigation funding after the 2019 flood.
Well, I would say that this meets the spirit of the program that we have in place, and I move that it be included in the buyout plans using tax dollars.
This is Mike. I would second that, but I have a couple of questions.
Mary, you're muted.
Thank you. Okay, moved and seconded. Now we'll have some questions and discussion. Go ahead, Mike.
I guess the first thing is you don't have anything on here for what are we going to do with the bridge? Or is it in good enough shape to do the demolition and haul everything out? And then what happens to the bridge afterwards? Do we take it out? It would seem to me that would limit access to the property and probably save us a lot of problems.
Yeah, great question, Mike. So over the last couple of years, as we've had issues with this bridge, we've had it in our highway budget to do the removal, but we haven't. We had left the bridge open up until last fall because it was still, for just walking over and for a car. But now, last fall, we had the recommendation from the DOT to close it, and then with what happened this spring, we haven't reopened it and don't plan to reopen it. So we, depending on when this home would get demoed, we'll plan to move forward either this fall or winter to demo the bridge, and we have that money in our budget. The house itself, there isn't an alternate route. It's very, I haven't been on it recently, and I know the homeowner has some concerns. The last time I took it, it's the west side of the road is right up against the Wild Rice River, and it has had a lot of slumping issue and has about a 20-foot vertical drop. So demoing the house we'll have to do some additional work to be able to make sure that that we have a safe egress route to get for a demo contractor to be able to remove that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'm not on the committee and there's a motion on the floor, but I was going to ask a question before the motion was made.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of questions. Now, I'm assuming this situation is not being caused by the diversion.
Commissioner, you're correct. It is not.
Okay. Are we required to buy out this property by any means? I mean, is there a requirement that the county buy out the property?
To my knowledge, no. I think in the past, when we've removed bridges, we have worked to provide an alternate access. In some cases, we've built, a half-mile access road around, through a field to access someone's property when a bridge was removed, and so that would generally, that's what we've done. We haven't just removed the bridge and left someone with no access. We've had to provide some sort of access, and in this case, because of the only alternative access to the south is also squeezed between the rivers, the river there, and has the soil stability issues. To me, I think the cheaper alternative really is just to do the acquisition.
And then one last one, with our policy that states, we should pay 90%, the homeowner is so absorbing 10% of the cost of a flood buyout. Just curious as to why we're proposing to pay the 110%. It's because somebody else did it. And would this thing really have an issue with valuing higher than the current assessed value, given no access, slumping on the road, you're going to be flooded? I'm just curious why we would offer 10% premium on this. I think they'd be happy just to get bought out at assessed value, but that's just my thoughts.
And Commissioner, I'm definitely, I guess, in my discussions with the landowner, they're willing and interested in getting bought out. That is something that could definitely be brought forward.
So I'll just throw this in. I guess this has always been my perspective of that 110% of the assessed value, is that assessed values are rarely more than what the home is worth. And so I would say, 9 times out of 10, if you take 110% of the assessed value, that's probably what an appraisal will come in at. Just generally around Fargo and West Fargo, I mean, that just, sometimes it's 95%, but that's just my experience over 20 years of real estate, that you look up at that assessed value and it's just 5-10% more than that is what you're going to probably get for it. So that, it's just a quick rule of thumb way to get to a number, I think. But then the question, I guess, just to confirm, is our policy says then that we would be paying 90% of that and the homeowner would be paying the 10%. That's how I understand it.
Correct.
So, I mean, in essence, you really end up back at the assessed value.
Right. Not 110% of it. Because we're suggesting we're paying 100% of the total cost. 110% plus the cost of demo. So it's way beyond the 90%. But if we're going to go that route, then we should consider probably changing the policy.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm clear. I think we are following the policy because it would be 90%. Ken, did you want to say something?
I believe you're talking about two different things. What you're talking, Mary, is that we take the totals and then the homeowner pays for 90% of it based on the formula that we're speaking of, or that they pay 10% and we pay 90%. I think what Rick's talking is that we're paying 100% of what we see in front of us. And I guess
Plus 10%.
the motion contemplates that we do this buyout in, using the policy that we have in place, which would coincide with what Mary's talking about.
Doesn't coincide with the numbers though, that Jason presented.
Okay, well, let's figure it out then.
Commissioner Steen, you're correct. I've put 100% of those costs in, so.
Plus 10% of the assessed value.
Correct.
Yeah.
So based on the policy, I guess it would be.
If we paid 90% of that total, then we'd be in line with their policy.
Right.
Correct.
Correct. And so that's where the numbers need to be.
And that's what
We want to propose something else, but I think my understanding is that that's what the motion was, is to go through with our current policy.
I think the motion was to pay the amount that Jason presented.
Well, we'll clarify this. The motion was to pay, was to do the buyout. We didn't specify an amount, and it has to be within the policy that we have. So to clarify, the motion was for the 569,202 times 10%.
Is that how you see it, Mike?
I would agree with that.
Okay. So that's a good point, Rick. I want to make sure that we all understand where we're at. And, it is in the county's best interest that this property not be there. But you're right, the diversion is not making this any worse than it already is. If it was, then we would be running this through diversion funds, and they would be getting a totally different value and relocation.
It lasted as long as it did when you see the photographs.
Yeah. So one other quick question: Do they access this through another property to get to it now? Is it their son's property or something, or?
It's through their father's property on. Well, probably one of the easier ways to see it would be on page 3, where if you look at the on the left with the minimal disturbance zone, you can faintly see along the property going to the south, because it is a big oxbow, that's where it follows. And then it connects with Cassette Drive, which then Cassette Drive, you would follow that south and then back to the east to Highway 81.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? We've got a number of items to go through here. Any more discussion? And a roll call, please.
Just to clarify, so the motion is for the 569,202 at 90% of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Make sure I have it for the minutes. Okay.
As our current policy states.
Okay. Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Sterling?
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Let's move on to the one up north. Go ahead, Jason.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So again, starting at page 11, going to this is the Phillips property. It's right at the confluence of the Cheyenne and Red Rivers. Page 12 shows the 100-year floodplain. So the property, the house itself falls within that 100-year floodplain, and it's also within the new FEMA floodway that was also as part of the Red River because of its close proximity to the Red River. So that small little open area that's not shaded in blue is the only available spot, but it's really not a viable place to try to pick up and move the home. It's not a viable building site. Page 13 on the left in red is the minimal disturbance zone, which is a little bit different on the Cheyenne versus the wild rice in the red, but this property is within that. And then with the diversion project on the right-hand side, the house itself still sits with where it'll be damaged. And I know it's a little bit difficult because of how dark the roof is on but there's the two smaller structures, kind of metal buildings, and north to the up and left of you can see a road with a little cul-de-sac, and left and above that is where that house is. So it sits within both the minimal disturbance zone and the protected, or the what'll still be flooded with the diversion. Beyond the flooding and floodway issues, and of course this was brought into the floodway after this home has been there. I mean, this home has been there for well over 60 years. And but on page 14, you can see there's been some cracks that have formed on that are visible from the outside, but these cracks have really expanded from the inside now. And page 15, you can see how those cracks have opened wide, and between the floor joists and the rim joists and the concrete basement foundation, it's really separating and starting to significantly shift. Page 16, the left photo is from the fall of 2019 in the riverbank. To the right on the left photo is where the river would be, and you can see that the bank is slumped right up against the foundation, and at that point it slumped about probably 3 feet, and then on the right is a photo that was just taken last week, and that's now slumped another 4 to 5 feet. So it's about slumped down to the bottom of the basement, and the whole basement is starting to flex towards the river. And then just some additional photos on page 17. This property, we did submit it for a FEMA pre-disaster mitigation funding request, and we're still waiting back. We have not heard from them, from FEMA regarding that. And the last time we got an update, they're still saying that we'll probably hear back more in the June-July timeframe. But with this meeting coming up here, and some of the discussions that we've been having with the property owner and the safety of this structure, I thought it was timing-wise, it was better to try to bring this forward. And I didn't have a recommended motion, but my recommended motion would be that pending the results of the FEMA acquisition, if it's not approved for FEMA acquisition, that it then be approved for use of the half-cent sales tax money to move forward with the acquisition of this property. And then, as with the past item, the cost estimate of the 303, but then 90% of that.
Thank you. Questions for Jason?
Madam Chair, this is Robert.
Yes.
One question, Jason. I remember, I want to say a year and a half ago, Barrett brought this forward to, I'm not sure if it was this committee or to the board in general, and it was more of an update at that time without immediate action requested. Is the amount of slumping that's happened in the last year, is that what really has changed the recommendation at this point?
Commissioners, and Mr. Wilson, yes, right now, you know, just last fall I think with the heavier rain and the high water, it started moving more, and we were having discussions, and that's where it got added to that FEMA acquisition list and was approved last fall to go forward on that. But now this spring, as the water's gone down, the slumping has really kind of exacerbated itself. And that's something that we've seen in a number of areas along these tributary rivers, is some increased slumping this spring now that the water's gone down.
Okay, any other questions or motion?
Mrs. White?
This is Commissioner Pollock speaking. I would move to authorize the buyout at 90% of the 303,882.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Take the roll call, please.
Mr. Pollock,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Benson.
Yes.
Okay, and welcome, City of Castleton.
If you don't mind, I'm going to defer to Brandon to explain the project.
Okay, sounds good.
I don't hear you.
Are you there, Brandon? Well, why don't we, I don't know what's going on here, but why don't we move on to Harvard then, and we can come back to Castleton.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, my computer took about a solid minute to get my microphone back on. Apologize. Thank you, Commissioner Sherling, and thank you, commissioners and committee members. As Sheila mentioned, she's on the line as well. My name is Brandon Oy, City Engineer for Castleton. And the project that we have in front of you is related to the 2015 Castleton Industrial Park Project improvement that was previously approved for $255,000. That project was constructed back in 2016 with the intention of rerouting some water that caused flooding in the industrial park. We routed it north. I was going to try to share my screen. I'm a little weary of trying to do that, and it may hot up my computer, but a component of the project was to build a berm that protects water from going east into town into the industrial park. Back when that was constructed, there was a component of that berm that was not constructed right. It wasn't until the spring of 2019 that there was some flooding that was caused in the adjacent underpass. I believe it was provided in the original information that was submitted, but the water had tried to go east where it normally was going prior to the project, but there was a flood culvert under the railroad tracks, and that backed up and then flooded into the underpass. So we looked at it last year, early spring last year, and basically moved quickly to try to get plans drawn up to improve the berm area that was left low. We worked with the contractor to do that. So the project in front of you is asking for an additional amount. The total project cost, I should say, was $60,000. There was $2,000 remaining in the existing project for cost sharing. And then, as noted in the letter there was roughly $4,000 that was left in a previous project that was approved through the committee. That was for some levee repairs along the north side of the town. So per your previous request or previous motion, that one would be canceled out, go back. And then overall, what the city is requesting for approval of is 50% cost share from the difference of those, the 6,000 that's outstanding. So an additional 24, but if we were to use the previous motion, it would be less than 2,000, so 28,000 of the total $60,000 project is what is being requested. Are there any questions? Again, apologize, I'm not worried about sharing my screen and locking the computer up, so.
So my question is, for Jason, does this meet the criteria that we set up in the policies for this fund?
Commissioner Pollack, as I look at it, it does. It's and especially since it's a component of a project that we had already previously approved, it is a component. This work was a component of the levee work, so I don't see any issues with it.
And how much is being requested again?
The total project cost is $60,000. Requesting 50% at $30,000 total, but the city does have it was just under 2,000 already. That's remaining from the previous request of the 255. So it'd be the balance between those two. It's around 28,000.
Okay.
Aren't you really requesting 30,000 because we're going to just close out the previous one?
Yeah, you can do it that way. That would be probably cleaner.
Yeah. So. Okay. Any other questions?
This, Roger, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pollack?
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley?
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir?
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Olson? Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Okay, let's talk about Harwood now. We've got several different projects here. And I don't know who's there to talk about it.
And I have a request. This is Ken Pollack.
Yes.
Because we're going to bump up into the ending of this meeting before we probably get through it all, maybe we can first talk about the items in Harwood Township or Harwood City that are not impacted by the diversion.
Okay. And I appreciate that suggestion, but let's maybe, Jason, do you want to talk about just the whole packet altogether and see if we can even cut to the chase a little quicker?
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I have not, since this packet came out in the last week, I haven't had a chance to talk with Doug Warnke or one of the township officers, but over the last year, we've had a number of discussions with Harwood Township regarding flooding both east and west of I-29. And I think really the best approach would be for us, because there's multiple different factors that fall into these projects. Some of these projects are road raises that are west of I-29 that will be basically improved once the diversion's in. There's projects east of I-29 that are currently part of the diversion road raises, or could potentially be added to those projects, because there are some transportation improvements that will be going on in that area north and east of the city of Harwood, within Harwood Township, to make sure there's still access when the diversion operates to some of these properties. So I think in lieu of trying to identify specific projects to fund, and since there's not really a funding request that's been developed with this packet, what my recommendation would be is that between the highway department and diversion authority staff, that we sit down with Harwood Township, go through each of these projects and identify what is truly viable to do more detailed analysis on, and bring back for a request, and then which projects either aren't necessary because they're going 4 years from now they're not going to be needed once the project is diversion projects constructed in that area, or which maybe could be included with the diversion project itself in the transportation improvements.
Thank you, Jason. Would that satisfy you, Commissioner Pollack, or was there a specific project that you wanted to talk about now?
No, I don't have any projects here that I want to talk about. I just, I was like Jason. I recognize that a lot of these problems are going to be solved with the diversion.
Right.
And then when you start talking about raising CAS 32, I mean that probably creates more problems than it solves. We've been down that road before of people are worried about getting flooded out because that road gets raised. Well, once again, this is a problem that goes away with the diversion.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess I think that if you sit down and figure out what we need to address and what we don't need to address, and then just bring that back to the committee for further discussion, I think that would be the wisest course at this point.
And prioritize them too, or the township needs to prioritize them also.
And yeah. So, and do you want to just make a motion to table these now at this point then?
The motion that I would make is that we direct our engineer to have dialogue with Harwood Township, and if there were any of these that were the city of Harwood also, but the Harwood Township ones are the ones I'm familiar with, and come back to us with the recommendations after further consultation.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, and then I just have one other request is that when the agenda packets go out, I don't know exactly who does these, but it would be great to have these projects listed so we know exactly what we're going to be talking about, especially if they're going out, to other folks, so they can easily identify a project that they might be interested in. So that's my only thought. Any other business here?
I just had one question for Jason. This is Rick.
Sure.
Jason, did the military start on facial hair? Just curious.
When I've got my guard drill this upcoming weekend here, so I'll be shaving it pretty soon. This is I guess I was expecting I was going to get called up and have to shave it, but every morning passed and I didn't get the call, so I don't know if it's good luck or bad luck.
Well, so Jason, you start at the Adam's apple and then go all the way around and end at the Adam's.
Rick,
It's easy that way.
What's that?
That's because you can't grow it on his head.
Okay. Anyway, I had to give you a
Following the
rest.
lead of our great commission chair, Commissioner Peterson. So
Oh, yeah, he's looking.
Hey, I resemble these comments.
Okay, well, if there's no further business, we will stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. In a few minutes.